Hello everyone and welcome to this webinar. My name is Esten Hoel and I am the Head of Quality and Security at Basefarm, a European managed service provider, since last summer a part of Orange Business Services actually. Basefarm have conducted the Digital Ability Survey, and in this series of webinars we will be sharing some of the market insight that we have seen from this survey. Just a practical thing, in your browser you see a Q&A function, hopefully. If you have any questions, please post them there. I expect this to take more or less half an hour, not more. If there's time at the end, I will try to answer some of your questions. If not, then we will get back to you with the response to your questions after the webinar. Okay, a little bit about this survey and the report. It was made between May and September 2018, receiving feedback from a bit more than 200 respondents from companies in Norway, in Sweden, and even from other countries in mainland Europe. In the survey, we tried to learn how organizations of different sizes are progressing in their digital transformation, a journey that more or less all companies across all industries, I guess, are on these days. The survey focused on 4 areas: cloud adaptation, big data, information security, which is the topic we will be looking at today, and innovation. These 4 areas, we see them as sort of cornerstones that defines how organizations manages to create digital success. So, in other words, the company's digital abilities. We use something called the maturity ladder. It's a system to sort of determine the current level of professionalism across the 4 areas. And let me quickly try to explain how this applies to today's subject area, information security. Companies on level 1, what we call on the ground, do not have any focused efforts or capabilities on information security, more or less. They may be using security services if they get them sort of bundled into products that they use and buy elsewhere, like email, spam filters, antivirus systems, very basic stuff, but that's about it. On the next level, organizations still have quite limited capabilities, but they do understand the risk they face, and they are certainly planning to do more. These companies have typically appointed someone responsible for information security, probably as the CISO or something, but quite often or quite normal is it that this is combined with other areas of responsibilities in their organizations. Their main focus is obviously securing data, and most efforts are probably used on perimeter security, trying to avoid strangers getting access to their systems and their data. The next level, the ready for takeoff phase, here we find organizations that actually do quite a lot already and is in the process of doing even more. They typically have, at this stage, a relatively good risk awareness for their business. And they also typically have dedicated security staff, or at least a dedicated CISO, although some obviously could use other titles, somebody who's responsible for this area. On level 4, in the cloud, these organizations have quite a structured approach to information security. Their CISO is either a part of top management or at least having a direct line of reporting to top management. We see that information security has found its way into support function policies and processes in, for instance, HR functions, procurement, finance, supporting functions in the organization. They have started using internal control frameworks, and most of these companies are ISO certified, probably ISO 27001 certified to a great extent. Level 5, those would be the top performers. They have everything the business has required in the past, and probably a few things that they don't remember why they needed in the first place. The main difference from level 4 is that these companies operate their own security operations center, SOC, with at least some form of an on-call based 24/7 operation capability. For these companies, addressing security risks are equally natural as addressing other types of business risk. It's very much integrated into the business that they do. Okay, now let's look at where our survey participants believe that they are on this ladder. This graph shows the 3 different company sizes. So we look at companies with less than 100 employees. We call them small in this context. The ones with between 100 and 1,000 employees are mid-sized, and the ones with more than 1,000 employees is big companies in this respect. And what we see here is that it's not any big surprises probably. The small companies are typically not yet airborne, so they will be on level 1, 2, or 3, most of them. The mid-sized companies reports that they have come a long way toward their sort of desired state, with one major investment yet to make, because quite many of these companies seems to have plans to establish their own security operations center in the future. Now, the large companies have obviously not been born big. They have grown over years and decades, and they have made investments required to protect their assets all along. Most of these companies report to be in orbit on level 5 on this ladder. You will notice that quite a few of them actually also states that they are ready for takeoff. And looking deeply into the survey, we think we understand this a little bit. We think that these companies are actually trying to transform their legacy security to match the future business requirements. So they basically taken a step back, and they want to sort of progress this back into the in-orbit state. Then we asked these companies, what are your biggest concerns when it comes to information security? On this page, we decided to show the small and the mid-sized companies in one graph, since they are surprisingly similar. They both report that the biggest concern they have is understanding the threat that the business is facing. Followed by 2 statements that both points to difficulties in attracting and retaining security experts. Remember that most of these companies not yet have reached level 5, so they have not established a security operations center or anything similar. And it's not really surprising then that they also are concerned about their ability to detect security breaches. They think it will take them too long time. This survey was conducted in 2018, and that was just months after the GDPR was actually put into full effect in our countries. No big surprise, I guess, then that companies have GDPR compliance on their radar. However, many says that it comes at the expense of handling external threats. So it would seem that compliance comes at the cost of actual security. Not quite what the lawmakers hope to achieve, I suppose. Let's have a look at the large organizations then. The picture is slightly different there. They still report the internal threat understanding to be the by far actually biggest concern that they have. They also report lack of competency, and they also actually point or put some blame on GDPR. So that's where they are similar to the other companies. The 2 new things on this chart is, are these 2 things. Lack of a proper roadmap for information security and insufficient budgets. That's what the big companies tell us that they're worried about. When we look into the details of the report, there's actually a great correlation between what we saw earlier, the big companies taking a step back to the level 3 maturity. That's the same guys that report that they are worried about where to go in the future with the security efforts, and that they lack the funds to make substantial investments for the time being. And one way of seeing this is that these guys might actually be ahead of the queue, because they have apparently realized that they need to change the way they do work with information security, started doing it and not completely through the transformation phase yet. Whereas the ones that still think that they're surfing nicely along in orbit might actually lagging behind. Is that my take from this? Let's move back to the small and mid-sized, because they reported these two issues, which is not on making the list for the big ones. So they said that it's hard to track the security competency. The big ones apparently have less problems doing that. I guess the big companies of this world have the brand that make them quite attractive for people wanting a job. Also, time to detect breaches is more of a concern for the small and mid-sized companies than the big ones. And the big ones, remember, often operate their own full-blown security operations center. They are more confident in their abilities in this area, probably rightly so. So using the input from the report and using also the experience that Basefarm has after operating or managing services for customers in different industries and in all sizes for a number of years, this is what is typical for the small organizations of this world. Of course, their actual size limits them and limits their abilities to make huge investments and to set aside dedicated teams of resources to deal with information security. And they are predominantly on the runway or ready for takeoff still. The InfoSec responsibilities are shared, so the guys dealing with that is also doing something else. They have difficulties understanding the threats that they face and lack abilities to detect and respond to incident and security breaches. So the question is then, how will these guys get off the ground? I'd like to add the comment that small businesses often, and this is something we see quite clearly, small businesses often tend to think that they have nothing to be afraid of from a security perspective, because they are unknown entities to the criminals of this world. The problem is that cybercrime is very often blind, that they search quite randomly for vulnerable victims wherever they may be and whoever they may be. The mid-size organizations. Information security have grown into a separate organizational unit for many companies, quite often too distant from the business. That's quite typical. That's partly possible to see from the report, and that's our own experience working together with many customers in this size. They, however, have put substantial time and focus on information security, and they understand that this is key to actually customer trust. So they have done a lot and are doing even more, have taken off. The majority of these guys have dedicated security experts and teams, and they seem to be lacking good cooperation, at least with business units from time to time. These companies share the same ambition for their information security efforts most of the time. They would like to grow their security teams, and they would like to be able to afford their own security operations center, preferably 24/7. But they find it hard to attract the right experts to actually get there. The question is if they're actually being a bit too ambitious when wanting to build a full SOC in-house. And I'll get back to that particular topic a bit later. Large organizations, for them security is everything, and large companies has all the resources and the things they need to work proactively as well as reactively with information security. They have invested and still keep on investing in security. Sometimes the question is, does the security that they have spent 10, maybe 15, 20 years building, is that actually shaped and ready to support next generation business when the business is transforming? Many of these companies says that their security work is obviously in orbit, but many of them also, as I said earlier, reports to be having gone back to ready for takeoff, and that's where I think that the transformation is well underway. Even these guys report that general internal understanding of the threats that they face are their biggest concerns. So the big question I have is that these big internal security teams that have been working on this for ages, are they able to support digital transformation? Are they in fact preventing their organizations from reaching their business goals in the future? Okay. The last part of this slide set, we will be brave enough to come up with the 5 recommendations on where you should consider going next. Of course, these are quite general, and some of you here today will probably think that you have done this, or at least part of this already, and you may agree or disagree, but let's have a go at them. The first one is close to my heart, at least. Skip the threat rhetorics and keep on talking. As a security manager myself, I know I do this. I talk too much about things that may happen. We love to talk, don't we, about nation-state threat actors, although very few of us has actually ever been targeted by them. We also love to talk about the high-profile incidents that hits the news, and we try to scare our executive management that this will happen to us soon if we don't invest heavily. And then we talk too little about the positive effects of all the small but the clever things that we are doing or that we could be doing in our daily work, all of us. As the head of security in Basefarm, I think my job is to encourage, to empower, and to enable everyone in my company in order for them to do the right things and do the things right. And that's sort of a top-down approach to how you should implement or maintain information security, but the actual security is built bottom-up, I believe, very much so. It has to do with the people doing their day job in the right way, having sufficient tools, sufficient awareness, and doing the right things. It's actually a fact that even though it's hard to attract security professionals, a lot of the security that is needed can be done by others, by people without particular security skills, because it's keeping your house tidy basically is preventing lots and lots of the bad things that happens out there. The next one, security and innovation. We had a breakfast seminar at Basefarm where we, with the topic security and innovation, a true love story. And we believe that is actually true. Traditionally, business development and security teams have had somewhat conflicting goals, and they would prefer to stay as much away from each other as possible. That is convenient, of course, for the developers, as they can do whatever they like. And it is equally convenient for us in security, as we would always be able to excuse ourselves. We didn't know. Then I'd like to explain one of my favorite words, flexicurity, because when we look at our customers, we see some customers were 100% control and security is the most pressing issue. Others, if you look at this on a scale and you have these companies on the left side, on the right hand side you have the guys that doesn't really care about it as long as they can beat the competitors and be has the lowest time to market and be as flexible and agile as you like. And any company in any industry could benefit from having a proper think about where do you position yourself on this scale. It's about understanding your risk appetite, and it's about being able to set the common target for your developers and your operations and your security teams. Many has adopted the DevOps, agile, lean development already. It's about time we put Sec into that to arrive at a proper DevSecOps. I know that even security will be better. You will have increased security if it's introduced bit by bit rather than as a big bang at the end of a long project. Then it's probably too late. Another point I'd like to make is that security needs to be considered in all phases of innovation cycles. When your business developers has a fantastic idea of a new service to develop and launch, have a short think about it and see if it's viable from a security and compliance perspective. I'm sure it is, but then sometimes a few adjustments could be made, which could save you lots of time and stress in later stages of that development cycle. And of course, include security tests into your production for development tools. Make it as automated and as efficient as possible, but please do it. This is probably a $1,000 question for many still. Is the cloud safe? It should probably say secure. Our answer to that question is yes, they are, very much so. But it is in fact probably the wrong question to be asking. You should rather ask yourself, am I using the cloud in a secure way? As an example, I have a very secure car at home. It's got lots and lots of safety features protecting me, or supposed to protect me. However, there's nothing stopping me from leaving the safety belts off and even the headlights off, driving 150 an hour on the wrong lane on the motorway. Then it's not safe anymore. That's me not using it in a safe way. The same is actually true with the public cloud offerings. The cloud suppliers are responsible for security of the cloud. You, their customers, must take a responsibility for your security in the cloud. The hyperscale cloud providers, they offer a fantastic range of security features. They are not there to understand your business and tell you exactly which of these features you need. So you need to make your mind up and decide that yourself, and you need to understand how to make best use of these tools. They provide the tools, you need to use them. And these tools, we support using native tools that these cloud providers offer. We use that in Basefarm. So the tools are different from when we provide similar security services for on-prem customers, but the work of a security engineer is very much the same. Work smarter with your security resource. we said. We already discussed that security experts are hard to find, hard to keep, and to be frank, they're also quite expensive. That's why you must make sure that you use the ones you got to the best possible effect for your company. Traditionally, security has been really focused on ring fencing your infrastructure and using intrusion detection systems to detect and possibly, preferably avoid that anyone getting in. And that is still smart. It's still actually something you have to do. It will probably stop a lot of the less advanced randomized hacker attacks out there. But those that really want to get into your network will probably manage to do so, let's face it, sooner rather than later. That's why you need more monitoring. You need to start monitoring things inside your network to detect people that already got on the inside. And doing that means you will be looking at tremendous amounts of traffic, tremendous amount of data that you need to monitor on a continuous basis. And it's already becoming way too much for human beings alone. So we do depend on automation, we do depend on machine learning, but we need to realize that those are only tools that can help us. We still need the security engineers, so that combination is vital. As I said, many companies have already, or at least they plan to invest in their own security operations center. They might call it something else, but that's what they want to do. My question is if they actually have thought about this enough. Will you actually be able to attract and retain the right people? Remember that the 24/7 operation requires substantial headcount. Will you be able to afford the running costs in the people, but even in the systems that you need for this? How, if you do this in-house, how do you think that you will be able to maintain the skill sets needed by focusing only on your security events, incidents, and breaches? Hopefully they won't occur that often. So potentially these guys need to work for months and hopefully years before they get into a real actual incident of any substantial impact. And how are you going to get access to and make use of worldwide threat intelligence? Because after all, you will be monitoring your company's traffic, your company's infrastructure. And even though you work in a large company, the world outside your company is much larger. So those who do this on a bigger scale and get access from hundreds of customers, potentially in different corners of this world, get a lot more threat intelligence that they can make good use of in the systems than you do alone. So consider outsourcing options. Consider SOC as a service would be my recommendation to these guys. The last point is the security transformation. Businesses are transforming, so must information security then, obviously. There's lots of talk about data-driven enterprises, so Internet of Things, big data, cloud. All of these things is providing security with new tools, new solutions, but it's also adding to our various security concerns. So we think that legacy security teams needs to transform. They need to define where they are, where they would like to be, and get started on this journey. And doing that, make sure that the security is properly incorporated into the organization. It's not a separate issue. It's not we have people to do that mentality that should continue. Okay, that was actually it, more or less on time, I see. Just the last page that reminds you of the next two webinars after this digital ability survey. Unfortunately, there was no room to answer any questions, but if you do have questions, please use the tool or send us an email or give us a call. and we can certainly discuss, and we can certainly try to answer any question you might have related to this topic. Fantastic. My time is up. Thank you for listening. Thanks, everyone. Have a nice day.